Have you ever thought about where all our trash goes? Every day, humans produce mountains of garbage, plastic bottles, food waste, old electronics, and so much more. Most of it ends up in landfills, some of it is recycled, and sadly, a lot of it pollutes our oceans and environment. With so much waste piling up, people sometimes ask a very strange but interesting question. Why don't we just throw all our trash into volcanoes? After all, volcanoes are already dangerous, fiery, and incredibly hot. They look like giant natural furnaces that could burn away anything we don't need. At first, the idea sounds simple and even clever. But is it really possible, or even safe, to use volcanoes as a giant trash can? At first glance, the idea of using volcanoes to get rid of trash feels almost genius. Think about it. Volcanoes already spew out fire, ash, and smoke that can wipe out everything around them. Lava flows are hot enough to melt rocks, so surely they can handle plastic, metal, and anything else we throw in. It feels like using nature's own furnace, one that never stops burning and doesn't need electricity or fuel to run. People might imagine that if we simply dumped our garbage into a volcano, it would all disappear in seconds, leaving no trace behind. No more giant landfills taking up land. No more plastic bottles floating in rivers and oceans. No more worrying about how to manage billions of tons of waste every year. It sounds like the perfect, shortcut solution to one of the biggest problems facing our planet. The idea is especially tempting because volcanoes look so powerful and unstoppable. When we see glowing lava rivers or fiery eruptions on the news, it feels like nothing on Earth could survive that heat. So naturally, many wonder, if a volcano can destroy forests, towns, and even reshape entire landscapes, why couldn't it also destroy our trash? But as simple as the idea seems, the truth behind how volcanoes actually work is far more complex. Before we think of using them as trash incinerators, we need to understand what really happens inside a volcano and whether it can actually make our waste vanish the way people imagine. To understand if volcanoes can destroy our trash, we first need to look at what really happens inside them. Lava, the glowing molten rock that pours out during an eruption, is incredibly hot. On average, its temperature ranges from 700 to over 1,200 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt rock, metal, and almost anything it touches. At first, this makes volcanoes seem like the ultimate tool for burning away garbage. But here's the surprising part. Not everything reacts to lava in the same way. Some materials, like wood or paper, would quickly catch fire and turn to ash. Others, like plastics, would melt and release thick clouds of toxic smoke. Heavy objects like glass or steel might not even melt completely. Instead, they could just sink into the lava and slowly get buried. So instead of making trash vanish, lava often just transforms it into something else, sometimes into harmful gases, sometimes into lumps of waste trapped inside molten rock. There's also a big difference between burning, melting, and breaking things down completely. Lava can melt materials, but that doesn't mean it destroys them at the chemical level. For example, when plastic melts in lava, it doesn't just disappear. It gives off dangerous fumes that rise into the air. So while it looks like lava is swallowing the trash, in reality, much of it is simply being released back into the atmosphere in a harmful way. So even though volcanoes look like giant natural furnaces, the science shows that they don't really make waste disappear. Instead, they just change its form, and often in ways that could be even more dangerous for our planet. Now that we know volcanoes don't really erase trash, let's think about the dangers of actually dumping garbage into them. At first, it may seem like the worst that could happen is a bad smell or some smoke. But the reality is much more serious. The biggest problem is toxic gases. When plastics, rubber, or chemicals burn, they release poisonous substances like hydrochloric acid, sulfur dioxide, and dioxins. These are not just bad smells. They are harmful to humans, animals, and the environment. Breathing in these gases can cause health problems, and if large amounts of trash were burned in volcanoes, the air for miles around could become unsafe. Instead of solving our waste problem, we'd just be shifting it into the sky, creating massive air pollution. Another danger comes from the way waste reacts with lava. Lava is extremely hot, and when it touches certain materials, it can cause sudden explosions. For example, if water or liquid waste were dumped into a volcano, it would instantly turn into steam. This rapid change can cause violent bursts of pressure, almost like mini explosions. Imagine truckloads of trash being dropped into a volcano and triggering dangerous blasts. It wouldn't just be risky for workers, but it could also destabilize the volcano itself. And it doesn't stop there. Some scientists believe that adding large amounts of foreign material to an active volcano could even affect its natural activity. While this isn't fully proven, the idea of humans interfering with such powerful natural forces is risky. Volcanoes are already unpredictable, and messing with them by throwing in garbage could make eruptions even more dangerous. So, while the idea of dumping trash into volcanoes might sound like an easy fix, the hidden dangers, deadly gases, explosions, and possible volcanic instability make it clear that this solution could cause more problems than it solves. Even if we ignore the dangers of toxic gases and explosions, there's another huge issue: practicality. On paper, tossing trash into a volcano might look easy, but in the real world, it's almost impossible to pull off. First, most people don't live anywhere near an active volcano. In fact, many countries don't have volcanoes at all. That means we would have to collect trash from cities, load it onto trucks, move it to ports, and then ship it across oceans just to reach the nearest volcano. After that, it would still need to be transported up dangerous, steep volcano slopes before being dumped in. The cost of doing all this would be enormous, far more expensive than any recycling or waste management system we use today. And remember, volcanoes aren't gentle, safe places. They are unpredictable, active, and extremely dangerous. Roads leading up to them are often rough or unstable. Workers trying to dump trash would constantly face risks from toxic gases, falling rocks, or sudden eruptions. In many cases, it might not even be possible to get close enough to drop in the waste safely. There's also the problem of scale. Humans create billions of tons of waste every year. Even if one volcano could take a little bit, it would never be enough to handle the world's entire trash problem. The sheer amount is so huge that volcanoes wouldn't even make a dent in it. In fact, relying on volcanoes could distract us from finding real solutions that actually reduce waste. So when you think about the cost, the difficulty, the danger, and the massive amount of trash we produce, it becomes clear: volcanoes just aren't a practical answer to our garbage crisis. Since volcanoes clearly aren't a safe or practical solution, what can we do with all the trash we create? The good news is that we already have better alternatives, methods that are safer, cleaner, and actually helpful for the planet. One of the most important alternatives is recycling. Instead of letting plastic bottles, cans, or paper rot away in landfills, we can process them and turn them into new products. Recycling not only reduces the amount of waste piling up, but also saves energy and resources. For example, recycling aluminum cans uses far less energy than producing new ones from raw materials. It's a way of turning trash back into something useful. Another option is composting. Much of our daily waste, like food scraps and yard clippings, is organic and can naturally break down. Instead of throwing this material into landfills, where it releases harmful gases, we can compost it and create nutrient-rich soil. This soil can be used for gardening or farming, completing a natural cycle where waste becomes life again. We also have waste-to-energy plants. These are special facilities that burn trash in controlled environments, capturing the energy released to generate electricity. Unlike dumping waste into volcanoes, these plants are designed to filter harmful gases and minimize pollution. This means we can reduce the volume of garbage while also powering homes and industries. Of course, the best solution of all is prevention, creating less waste in the first place. By using reusable bags, cutting down on single-use plastics, and being more mindful of what we consume, we can reduce the overall amount of garbage that needs to be managed. This approach doesn't just treat the problem, it tackles it at the root. So, instead of throwing our trash into dangerous volcanoes, we already have smarter, cleaner, and safer solutions. Recycling, composting, energy recovery, and waste reduction may not sound as dramatic as lava swallowing garbage, but they actually work and protect the planet in the long run. So, what would really happen if we tried to dump our trash into volcanoes? At first, it might look like a clever shortcut, a fiery pit that could swallow anything we don't want. But when we dig deeper, the truth is very different. Lava doesn't make waste magically disappear. Instead, it releases toxic gases, risks dangerous explosions, and creates huge safety problems. On top of that, moving billions of tons of trash to faraway volcanoes would be nearly impossible and far too expensive. The idea of volcanoes as giant trash cans is exciting to imagine, but in reality, it would only make our environmental problems worse. The real answer isn't to look for extreme ways to destroy waste. It's to manage it smarter and produce less in the first place. Recycling, composting, waste-to-energy, and reducing what we throw away are solutions that actually work and don't put people or the planet at risk. In the end, volcanoes remind us of nature's raw power, but they're not the solution to our garbage crisis. If we really want a cleaner future, the responsibility is in our own hands, not in the mouth of a volcano.